What up, what up, what up? Here, go ahead and share this out if you would. I'm doing it as we speak. I've had a series of mishaps since the last scope. This is one of my, this is my self-decontamination unit. That is actually airtight. I do not know how much air I would have if I was locked in it, but no corona would get me, yo. Alright, besides spilling my drink on the bottom half of my phone so I couldn't get the charge I was after, but it seems to be working okay. And then I have to walk from my RV spot to the front of the property where I have just recently rented this unit. At the end of the month, beginning of next month, I'll be getting a much larger one at a very nice rate, I must say. And I'll be able to handle all my working, all the stuff I'm doing out of that. I was going to do my scope here and read part 7 to you guys, but the road is way too loud. And then, of course, last but not least, you can see my dilemma. I relapsed from my place to here. A total relapse. And it's because they just call these rocks around here. And it's just river rock from the Snake. And you got a river rock mine, you know, just up the street. And they've dug down 800 feet. And still haven't found bedrock. They're still pulling up river rock. So it's really a crazy amount of time that this stuff has built up. And like I said, most people around here, they're like, man, they're just rocks. Well, they're more than that. They're agates. I mean, I guess a diamond is just a rock. But on the way here, I found some unique pieces that I have not found anything like since I've been out here. Smooth as a baby's ass. I mean, what the hell? They're just rocks. So they say. But that's not a polished rock, even though it is polished. That's the river polished to that. So it's amazing. Anyway, I'm going to get back towards my place. If you guys will bear with me. If you share it out, that'd be great. If not, oh well, who cares? And I will get to part 7. I was going to do a couple chapters. I'm not sure if my phone will go that long, but we're going to try. I can't let the phone die because then it won't actually save the broadcast. And that's the problem with that I have with episode 4 is I couldn't put it on YouTube because I didn't have a physical copy of what I did. It's on Periscope, and so it sucks. Anyway, we are headed that way. Wow. I could have had a pretty bad accident there, but nobody saw it, so it's all good. Anyway, this is my humble abode. This is home base. Will be home base. Probably for at least 10 years. Regardless of whether we're here or not, we will definitely still keep the property because it's, well, at least keep that lot that we rent. It's very cheap. When I mentioned earlier that I've been high on life, it's because I've undergone a change that I really didn't see coming as far as the impact of it. I knew I'd raise my kids, and me and her together would get R5 out into this mean old world. I just didn't realize the amount of stress that leaves when the kids do. It's kind of crazy, and when your bills go down really low, it's yeah, it's crazy. We're in a spot now where April's going to have to take the next week off because, you know, obviously people aren't getting massages. I've been bringing in $300 to $400 freaking bucks a week just recycling. But they've shut down the recycling centers. So, you know, they're going to try and put us in a bind, but it's not going to happen because of, we're lucky, you know, we're fortunate that when it's just her and I, we sure don't need as much as we did when we had 5 kids. So anyway, I am going to, now we're away from that loud-ass road, I'm going to go ahead and get the memoir out and see how far we can go. As you see right there, I just got my sluice. If you don't know what that is, it's a sluice box. And my brother's had it over at his place for the last couple of years. And well, let's just say that if I brought his property back like that, holy crap, it's missing some stuff. But I wanted to give you guys a heads up. I had told you that my channel is going to be expanding a little bit and doing, you know, the rock type stuff. But also I mentioned gold mining. And we have joined a gold club, and probably Thursday or Friday, we're going to go up to one of the 2 claims, which is about an hour from here, in Oregon. Now, their regulations are libtarded and fucking stupid. So I'm going to have to be very careful on what I actually put on video and edit out there. Because, you know, really, they don't want you doing it at all. They don't want you doing shit. Nothing. They say there's spots where you can't pick up rocks. I like Idaho much better. And the second claim that this club has is in Idaho. The difference is it's a dry claim. So it's basically where a river used to be. So there's no water close. That makes it a little bit harder to do it. But anyway, Thursday or Friday we will be down there. I'm hoping I might be able to find a GoPro, a used GoPro, cheap, so that I can get video without having to try and use my hands, because you really need both of them out there when you're doing that kind of stuff. Oh, before I start, I wanted to show you guys something. I found this last year, and I have not done anything with it because it's one of those things right now, it's a mystery, and once I uncrack the mystery, then it's no longer a mystery. But this is the kind of shit you find when the water recedes in the Snake River. I don't know if I've shown you guys this. I've had it for probably, maybe 8-9 months now. But this is an old olive oil bottle. I cannot find a picture that matches this bottle. I found stuff that's similar. But the olive oil company, Jane Coop, is out of Spain. Now, I'm pretty sure this bottle didn't float from Spain. But someone took a lot of care. They used wax to seal it, tied it with, yarn, and tried to make it cool, and then taped it with white duct tape, which I was going to say I didn't think it would protect it much, but hey, it's not broken. And I can't tell what's inside. It almost looks like there's dirt or something inside, but there's got to be something more. There you go, Lemon. There you go, LA. That would be awesome, dude. Maybe some ancient Indian freaking remains, because they've always had olive oil. I don't know how long they've actually made formed glass, but anyway, I will open that, and I think I really should just do it on a scope sometime. Yeah, that's another reason why I'm a little scared to open it, because I don't want a genie to pop out. What if he's, a bad genie? Or a liberal genie? Oh my God. That would be terrible. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce. My friends call me Smooch Panda. If this is your first time wandering into a replay or this live scope, what I have here is a almost 80-year-old, well, this was written almost 80 years ago, a memoir of a man called A.B. Ward. He's famous for nothing. But this is his personal history that he dictated to his granddaughter when he was 90 years old. And it's a collection of basically stories that he could remember from birth to death. Or well, not death, sorry. 90 years at that point. He lived to be 99. But he met Frank and Jesse James and rode on the freaking Chisholm Trail with them. He's met Wild Bill Hickok. That was a big deal when we seen that name. I do believe Annie Oakley. I believe we're going to be getting into General Custer. And a lot of folks think that Custer died during the march through the South, but it was actually in Montana. Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders. There's a lot in here that I've been told, little bits here and there, but reading the stories have been awesome. Within 10 pages, we had lynchings. We had kids kidnapped and used as target practice by the Indians. Everybody thinks coronavirus and being stuck inside and everything is so hard. I recommend getting the frick out. Not in a crowd, obviously. But, get hooked on the rock. Get hooked on the woods. The trails. Get out. Get your fresh air. Away from people. You'll feel 100% better. Okay, that's enough of preaching from Smooch. We are on Chapter 5. I strongly recommend staying put if you have missed the first 6 parts. It's okay. You can go back and catch them later. These are just timeline, or, little stories with somewhat of a timeline, but you're not really missing anything. Just go back, check it out on my Periscope channel and my YouTube channel, except for episode 4. I believe it's 4. I'll be glad when I can sit down and do it all. Might take me the whole day, but when I do it all, I'll put it out in video, and then you can just watch it at your leisure. At your leisure. When we left off, basically, AB was working as a hand on a ranch where the head of the ranch was the head of the vigilante coalition. And, of course, like anybody else who has any kind of power, they're wielding it the wrong way and killing men. And, basically, if I had to think, they're killing rivals in competition. But we shall start now on page 27, chapter 4 of this memoir. Once again, I'd like to thank the man who has let me borrow this. I don't know if he'll ever watch this. He does not have the internet. He has a flip phone. And he's 77, so I don't think he's going to learn how to use a smartphone anytime soon. But if you do see this, Al Mack, you're a hell of a guy for letting us enjoy this personal history. Because there's nothing like this type of history. All right. Thanks, guys, for being in and, following along with me. Go ahead and share if you would like. And if not, like I said earlier, who cares? I could do this to 0 people, and I would still enjoy every bit of it. But I'm glad I got quite a few of you guys that enjoy this and are catching the replays. And pass it on. Pass it to your youngins, to your nieces and your nephews. Tell them that coronavirus ain't shit compared to this. Where one decision could lead you to starve or thirst to death within, 4 days. Alrighty, chapter 4. I'm going to try and do this to where you guys can see it. But if the lighting gets bad, since I lost my $700 pair of glasses in the river, I got an old script. And, I already can't see shit. Alright, my first work on the Matthews Ranch was cutting poles for a beef pen. When the corral was finished, Bud Matthews told his foreman to cut out a mount and tell me what to do. I was very glad to begin the job of line riding. 3 weeks later, I learned that my horse, along with Tom Runnels' horse, had appeared at a ranch near the present site of Seymour. Tom Runnels went after them, but returned without my horse. He said he was unable to catch mine. Man, give me just a second, because I think I read this. Oh my goodness. Let me look at the end of this chapter. I'm sorry, guys. It's been a week and that's what happens. Okay, that's 4 and 6. Yeah. I did read that, guys. Yep. Sorry about that. You guys never would have picked up on it if you hadn't seen it earlier, but then you would have watched and said, dang, Smooch, dumbass. All right, we're actually on page 30, chapter 5. My next work was cutting poles and building fence for Berry Meadows on Hubbard Creek north of Breckenridge, Texas. My luck seemed to be against me, for I had not cut 7 poles until my axe glanced from a pole and split my leg open. I had to hire another man to help me then. While working for Meadows, I had to make a trip to Pilot Point. There I witnessed an unusual jailbreak. A man had been put in jail for drunkenness. He set fire to a straw mattress, and when smoke began pouring from the windows, he started yelling for help to get out. A blacksmith in his shop near the jail grabbed up a sledgehammer, ran inside, and hammered the lock open. No sooner did the door swing open than the prisoner rushed out, jumped on a horse, and left for parts unknown. I did the fencing for Berry Meadows under contract. When the contract was completed, I took a job of gathering horses for Adam Powell and John Dyer. They had a ranch on the head of the Clear Fork and Brazos rivers. I was to gather 100 head of horses to be delivered to White Childress for 1,000 longhorn cattle. Wow. Once again, the value of a horse just cannot be overstated. One horse is worth 10 longhorn cattle. I then had to round up the cattle. They were wild and ranged the Clear Fork Mountains in Stevens County. Those cattle had never been driven from the brush into the valley, held in a bunch, then driven in a direction exactly opposite that which they wanted to travel. I did not have the time to haze those cattle out of the brush one at a time. It says haze. I wonder if that means herd. Even if it had been possible, with the aid of several men, I gathered a herd of less wild cattle from the valleys and drove them to a valley at the foot of a mountain and held them at the edge of the scrub timber. Then, along in the night, when all hands were set at their posts, ready to rush in behind the herd and push them out into the valley away from their retreat, a calf would be made to bawl. The bellowing of the calf would bring those wild longhorns out of the brush to investigate. Then, when the signal was given, all hands rushed in to hold the herd, thus enticed from their hiding places and to push them further out on more open country where the herd was gathered and held until ready for delivery at the ranch headquarters. I can't read it through the phone, guys, so if I have screwed the picture, my bad. Like I said, when I sit down and read it all of it will be able. I'm going to do it on the laptop. This was hazardous work at the best, and when done at night over unfamiliar country, it was often perilous. Upon one occasion, when the signal had been given to close in, I made a dash to turn one old mossy that had made a break for timber. I fell into a ravine that I had failed to notice in my rush to get ahead of the canny old longhorn. The sides of the ravine were not high, but they were straight up. Impossible for a horse to climb them. I had to ride down the ravine about a half mile before I came to a break in the bank that my horse could climb. By the time the entire herd, including the bunch of tame cattle, had disappeared... Oh, see, that's a period, not a comma. That makes it seem like my reading sucks ass. And sometimes it does, but, not in that case. I had to ride down the ravine about a half mile before I came to a break in the bank that my horse could climb. By that time, the entire herd, including the bunch of tame cattle, had disappeared. We tried again the next night in the same spot and was successful in gathering a large herd. We knew where that ravine was and how to avoid falling into it. When the desired number of cattle had been gathered and delivered to the ranch, and my men paid off. Damn. As soon as I talk about the wonders of my reading, I go and do that. See, that's typical Smooch Panda buffering right there. When the desired number of cattle had been gathered and delivered to the ranch, and my men paid off, they wanted to go on a buffalo hunt. We went to the head of Clear Fork on the Brazos. We sighted a herd of buffalo feeding near a ravine. We crept up the ravine within gunshot of the herd. I told the men that when I gave the signal for them to count 3, then fire. I would then climb the ravine wall and chase the herd on my horse and rope one for them. I had to chase them about a mile before my horse could overtake the stragglers. While going full speed, I roped a 2-year-old yearling. Before my horse could check his speed and stop, we had passed a tree. The buffalo yearling on one side, and my horse and I on the other. When the slack of the rope was taken up, those two animals came together, ker-smack, and quicker than a cat can wink its eye, I was rolling on the ground several feet from where I'd lit. The horse, being the taller, had had its legs knocked from under it and got up on the opposite side of the buffalo from the one he had been running on. As he got to his feet, he began to back away from the buffalo, finally drawing it up against the tree. With the complete loop around the tree that had been made by the horse sailing over the buffalo, it was held securely. The boys came up and teased the buffalo until it became fighting mad before the boys tired of their sport and killed it. They skinned it like skinning a skunk without splitting it down the belly nor front legs. One of the men then dressed the hide, making him an overcoat. He got into it by pulling it over his head and using his forelegs for the sleeves of the coat. It made a warm garment, but looked a sight with the long shaggy hair of the buffalo left on the outside. Soon after the buffalo hunt, I went to work for Dude Camel. God, come on, is that real? I gotta look up Dude Camel. And worked on his ranch for the rest of the winter. A man named Ellis and wife with their niece was doing the cooking for the ranch. A young man living not far away got to coming over evenings to call on Ellis's niece, Nancy. Ooh, to call on her. He's courting. The young man, John Higgins, and Nancy wanted to walk to a neighbor's house to sit up with a sick boy. Ellis objected to the girl going. John said if Nancy wanted to go, he'd see that she went. John Higgins was small and little more than a kid. Nancy said she was going. Ellis wasted no further words but came out and knocked John down. Then as Ellis stooped to hit the fallen man another blow, John pulled out his knife and stabbed Ellis just over the heart. The blood spurted and it looked like Ellis was going to bleed to death. John ran off and hid. When I started for a doctor, I ran over him in the weeds. The doctor came, dressed the wound, and stopped the bleeding. He was a new doctor sent out by the government for the soldiers. The wound healed nicely and was well in about a week. Wow. I guess he got lucky. Shortly after his recovery, Camel sent Ellis to Sherman, Texas after a load of supplies. Ellis purchased the supplies and started back with them. About 2 days out of Sherman, he camped and made his bed under the wagon. He was found later dead there with no other mark on him than the recently healed wound. Whoa. I left Dude Camel to begin work on the Stone Ranch northwest of Fort Griffin. That again put me in country where I had to be on the lookout for Indians. A man named McCabe, and I were given the job of riding the range line. We worked together most of the time, but if we split up, we were never long nor far apart. The reason for that will soon be apparent. McCabe was driving about 200 head of cattle up a small canyon, which was covered with brush. As he rode by a bunch of brush, 4 Indians fired at him at once. They had lain in wait for him to come within shooting distance. One shot went through McCabe's leg, just above his boot, and into the horse. Another shot split the Winchester stock off, which was extended out of the saddle boot. However, the first fuselage... I'm pretty sure that's what she meant there. Fulisade is, I don't think, a word, but the first fuselage failed to stop McCabe. Maybe I'm wrong. He forgot the cattle and struck out to widen the distance between himself and the ambushing Indians. 3 more Indians mounted on horses took after him. Using his 6-gun, McCabe shot 2 of the horses from under the Indians while racing up the canyon. The one remaining mounted Indian kept up the chase. He had a small piece of bright tin, about 1 or 1.5 inches wide, pinned on the hat holding the brim back to the crown in front, and a narrow belt made of a throat latch from a bridle. McCabe shot that belt in 2 with the shot that killed the Indian. The shot struck him center in the stomach. The 4 Indians that had lain in wait in the brush climbed the side of the canyon wall and began shooting at him from that angle. They succeeded in hitting the horse, breaking it down in the loins. McCabe had just pulled the Winchester from the saddle boot when the horse fell. Rolling free of the horse, he found shelter between a big flat rock and an elm tree in a small gulch leading off from the main canyon. Lying between the rock and tree, he was protected from the shots of the Indians on the canyon wall. They fired at the rock, hitting it in such a manner that the bullets would glance into the tree, literally cutting it off bit by bit. Another shot had struck McCabe while racing on the horse. The bullet had split his scalp on the top part of his head. When I heard the shooting, I knew my partner had run into some kind of trouble and hurried to his rescue. When the Indians heard me coming, they sneaked off in the brush, caught up the one remaining horse, picked up their dead companion, and disappeared. As I rode up to McCabe, he came walking out from behind the trees, stooping so as to display the top of his head, and said, "B, feel of my head and see if the brains ain't running out." He went down into the brush and found where one of the wounded Indians had laid upon a blanket. He got the throat latch belt and hat. Having heard that an Indian's belongings were buried with him, we searched for the grave of the dead Indian but never found it. We wanted to get that Indian's guns. We finally gave up the search and reported to the ranch headquarters. George Rollin, the cook, had run out of the soda, so the following morning he served us up biscuits with stock calomel. Something else I don't know. A supply was always kept on hand to kill out screwworms. What the fuck? Calomel. He served us biscuits, huh? Ah, he had found that and used it in the bread in place of soda. We lit out for a doctor as we needed one for more than McCabe's scalp wound after eating that bread. A gang of horse thieves were operating between Fort Sill, where the horses were stolen, and our section of the country. Bill Murphy bought one and asked me to break it in for him. I saddled that horse up one morning and rode him about a mile from the house to begin the work of training. I dismounted with the rope around his neck in one hand and the bridle reins in the other. He kicked at me as I got off and began backing off. He then whirled and went off pitching. I fed him slack in the rope until the knot in the end reached my hand. In some way, the rope looped around my little finger. The horse dragged me about 100 yards before I could get a hold of the rope and regain my feet. We did not always carry our guns, and that was one time when I did not have mine. If I had, that horse would have been dead. Without my gun, I had to save myself by stopping the horse some other way. I finally worked up the rope until I could get to my feet. Then it was comparatively easy to inch up the rope and get a hold of the bridle reins. My little finger was twisted until it is crooked to this very day. All right, let's see what my battery looks like. Oh, we actually got a little bit more. I'm going to keep going. At the beginning of the fall roundup in 1775... Oh, okay, that's got to be 1875, yeah, because he wasn't born then. At the beginning of the fall roundup in 1875, that's what you get with personal histories. You're going to get the mistakes. You're going to get the typos. I guess they didn't have editors. I began to work for Joe Browning, whose ranch was near Breckenridge, Texas. Breckenridge was called Picketville when I first went there. The store, there was only one, was built of logs standing upright to form walls with logs lying flat across the top supporting brush, which was in turn covered with dirt to form a roof. The structure was surrounded by a picket fence. It later became the county seat of Stevens County and was named Breckenridge. The year before I began working for Joe Browning, I wonder if that's Browning Rifles. Who knows? The year before I began working for Joe Browning, he made up a trail herd to go through to Wichita, Kansas. During the rounding up and branding of the herd, a steer was found without a brand. Both Browning and his wife's brother claimed the steer and said his brand should go on it. The argument became heated, and Browning drew his gun and shot his brother-in-law, McCarley. Turned to walk away, and McCarley shot him through the hip before dying. Browning recovered from the hip wound, but was a cripple the rest of his life. During the same branding, and while the cattle were being put through the branding chute, another man was killed. A long, narrow chute was used for branding rather than roping each animal and dragging it to the branding fire. By that method, the cattle was forced through the chute one at a time. One man stood on the chute fence, receiving the hot branding iron from a man tending the fire close by, and branding each animal as it passed him. During the course of the branding, the man on the fence asked the cowboy helping him to hand him a chew of tobacco. The cowboy replied he didn't have any. Then the man on the fence said, "You're a damn liar." To be called a damn liar was an insult that no man took as long as he was able to defend himself. The cowboy on the ground whipped out his gun and shot the offender, killing him instantly. The work continued uninterrupted until night. Then the body was picked up from where it had fallen and buried. No investigation nor prosecution followed. The matter was simply accepted as all in a day's work and forgotten. When I began working for Joe Browning at the start of the fall roundup in 1875, several outfits worked together branding on the separate ranch ranges as we came to them. Unbranded yearlings and calves were branded with the same brand found on the mother cow. We went to work on Davidson's range about 12 miles north of Breckenridge at Crystal Falls. Davidson was on a drunken spree. He ran over calves and raised them generally until Mr. Hogwood, another mason and big ranchman, said in a mild tone, "Mr. Davidson, you're going to cause trouble." Angered, Davidson turned upon Hogwood, drew his six-shooter, and killed him. Davidson was arrested and taken to the Breckenridge jail. He made the $10,000 bond, then forfeiting the bond, went to Oklahoma City and changed his name. His sister-in-law gave him away, and he was brought back and again released upon a $10,000 bond. He returned to Oklahoma, and word came back that he died there, ending the charges against him. Wow. Now, $10,000 is a shitload of money in today's. In 1875, 10 grand? Golly, that's got to be several $100,000. Twice. After working the range around Crystal Falls, we were sent south to Bud Wiley's ranch on the Concho River. There we were sent out in all directions from the ranch headquarters to go 1 day's ride, camp for the night, then work back toward the ranch headquarters. All right, I'm going to vape for a sec. The dirt right there in the purple and white bag and in the white bucket and in the black bag, that's all pay dirt off the Snake River. The old guys out here told me that the big rock chucks, they're like woodchuck holes and badgers and stuff like that. They dig deeper than anybody else. And so back in the day, the old men would never pass up a fresh hole without panning the top layer. Getting a shovel or so out of it. Same with the big fire ant hills. The little things you find out, it's phenomenal. All right. After working the range around Crystal Falls, we were sent south to Bud Wiley's ranch on the Concho River. There we were sent out in all directions from the ranch headquarters to go 1 day's ride, camp for the night, then work back toward the ranch headquarters. Two of the boys, John Brown, and his brother, were riding up a long draw when they noticed a fellow riding ahead of them. They galloped up to overtake him, thinking he was one of the boys in the roundup. It was about sundown when they sighted the rider and near camping time. The fellow the Brown brothers had sighted turned out to be 2 Indians. When the brothers were sighted, one Indian slid off the horse into the grass. As the Brown boys rode by, he shot one, killing him instantly. The other lit out for the ranch at a run. That postponed the roundup. It took a day to get to the boys in for the funeral. However, the day following the funeral, the work was resumed and the branding was finally accomplished without further interruptions. I worked through the following year with Joe Browning and was with the same outfit when the fall roundup began in 1876. She made that same. I wonder if she didn't have an 8. I was having chills every other day. Mr. Browning gave me some of the ranchman's cure-all, stock calomel, for my chills. Man, I gotta look that up now. We started south to the Mullins Ranch to begin the roundup and passed a big watermelon patch. We forgot cattle roundups, stock calomel, and chills for a while we gathered watermelons. Next morning, I knew what it meant to be salivated. My mouth was sure sore. My teeth were so loose they were ready to drop out. I asked Mr. Browning for some money, and he wanted to know what I needed with money out in the cow country. I told him to feel my teeth and see what he thought. You could move them around with your fingers. He exclaimed, "My God, boy, you sure need something." I then replied, "Give me some money, and I'll get something." Gambling wasn't allowed on the job, so we had no use for money except when we took time off to go to town. Payday, therefore, was whenever we called for our pay. After receiving the money I had asked for, I inquired how far it was to the nearest doctor. I was told he would be found at the government post at Concho Post, some 30 miles away. Wow. When I found the doctor there, he wanted to know what I'd been eating. I told him dead calves and frost-bitten watermelons. He said he knew it was something besides cow chuck. He fixed me up and sent me back to the ranch where I arrived by night. I had covered 70 miles on horseback that day. Saw the doctor and was back at the ranch by night. I reported for work the following morning. After working the Mullen Ranch, we continued on to Coggins Ranch, where the roundup work progressed without any trouble. We went from there across country to Kay Elkins, Clay Mann's, Sam Golston's, and then Jim Ned's camps on the Colorado River. There we staged the biggest roundup of my ranching career. There were 100 men or more engaged in the undertaking. On the trip to the site of the big roundup after leaving Coggins Ranch, we camped on Hode's Creek. It was pretty cold, so we boys crowded up around the cook's fire until we left little room for the cook. He had a needle gun with a large quantity of cartridges ready for use in case of an attack by Indian. He, the Negro cook, took a handful of those cartridges and threw them into the fire. We were worse than a bunch of stampeded cattle in getting away from there. It sounded like a whole army had fired simultaneously. When the excitement died down and we discovered the cause of the commotion, which had so effectively cleared us out of the cook's way, we would have hung a Negro cook then and there if the boss had not intervened on behalf of the cook. From the Colorado River spreads, we went to Erath County to the Thornton Corrals. In that section, the settlers were allowed to pen up as many cows as they wished to milk and care for. We went in pairs to those pens and branded the calves. We called that still hunting. One morning, Frank Justice and I went together on one of those still hunts. We rode up to a pen just after the morning milking had been finished. The brands had all been blotched or burned out. I went into the pen to try to see if I could make out what the brands had been. While I was in there looking them over, a red-headed woman came running out of the house. I soon found she had a temper to match the hair. She yelled at me to know what I was doing in her cow pen. I replied by asking her where she got those cows. She told me the brand was Bob Baker's, that he had let them have the cows to milk. That was all right, but I said that I could not read the brands and asked her if she could get Mr. Baker to come down and read them for me. That was when she lost control of her temper. My partner was dying laughing and offered me no assistance in mounting my horse and getting beyond reach of that redhead. She called after me that her husband was cutting wood up in the timber a ways, and he would attend to me. I didn't have any business with him, so Justice and I continued on to another pen about a mile's distance from that of the red-headed woman. Joe Browning left us there under the leadership of John Roberts of the other outfit to return home. Roberts told Pony Inyard, the new cook of our outfit, to hold the herd we were gathering while the boys were out rounding up other cattle. He went out and stayed with the herd a short time and came back to camp and told Roberts that if he had to herd cattle, we had to help him cook. I spoke up that I did not want him to cook for me. Mark Bird's Winchester was leaning against the wagon wheel, and Inyard grabbed it. "If you want to settle that, get your gun," he said. Snyder was sitting close to me. I grabbed for his 6-shooter, but he whirled away from me. Mark jumped up and took his Winchester away from the cook. Roberts was lying under a tree, but got up after the quarrel and said, "Stop that where it is, or I take a hand in it." Pony Inyard knew that Roberts had been appointed boss and that he would get his walking papers, so he returned to the herd. However, when Browning returned to camp, he paid Inyard off and hired another cook named Ball. In a day or so, Ball broke out with measles. I was exposed, but thought nothing of it, as I was concerned by the loss of a fine saddle horse. One of the hands had returned to ranch headquarters for his and my saddle horses. They were both good ones. He picked the horses up north of Fort Griffin and hobbled them out there overnight. The Indians made a raid and succeeding in getting away from my horse. I left immediately to go search for him. While hunting for the horse on the Indian reservation at Fort Belknap, near the present Graham, Texas, I took sick with the measles, but did not know what was the matter with me. After exposing a goodly portion of the Tonkawa's Indians and becoming too sick to continue the search, I returned to the Browning headquarters. I went to the bunkhouse, but Mrs. Browning saw me and came down to inquire into why I was there instead of with the boys in the roundup. I told her that I was a mighty sick man. She looked at me and said, "Yes, you are a sick man. You have the measles." I remembered that our new cook Ball exposing me to the measles. It was not until later that I learned of the havoc I had wrought among the Indians. The Indians' method of treatment for any sickness was to jump into the river. When they began taking the measles, not knowing anything about the disease, as it was white man's sickness, they jumped into the water. Half of the tribe must have died because of that treatment before a government doctor was sent for from the fort to look after them and teach them how to care for themselves. There was an old bachelor who had settled on a small farm near Browning's headquarters. He came to see me while I was sick and invited me to his farm to eat melons as soon as I was able to get over. I liked melons, and if they had salivated me once, when I ate them after taking stock calomel, as soon as I was able to get around a little, I paid the old Bach a visit. When I got to his shack, I saw him walking across the field. Supposing that he had not seen me, or else having seen me had gone to the field for promised melon, I sat in the shade patiently waiting for his return. Finally, I decided he hadn't seen me, and I started across the field to him. He circled around me and headed back for the house. Nonplussed, I did not return to this shack that day, but bided my time until the boys returned to the ranch. When the boys rode in several days later, I told them I had a nice picnic planned for us. They kept a solid stream of questions until I had to break down and tell all. They were with me as they agreed that the old box should be taught a lesson in range hospitality. That night, even nature seemed to be on our side, as the moon shone so brightly that we had no difficulty in locating the melons. He had piled the melons along the road leading out from the house through the melon patch, ready to load them the following morning, to haul to the fort and sell them to the soldiers. They were real nice, large and juicy. The first pile disappeared in a hurry. We rode on to the next pile, and each selected one to carry back to the bunkhouse, where the rest of the ranch hands were given a feast. Then we all had a melon fight. We had a night's fun and feast while we hoped the old bachelor was taught a lesson in etiquette for the next time he invited a cowboy over to eat a melon. After 2 years of nursing cattle on the Joe Browning Ranch, I set out on the trail south with 2 more men to meet a herd we had learned was traveling through to Kansas to get a job. However, when we met them, they did not need any extra men. We kept on south, finally arriving at my cousin Marion Miller's ranch in McCullough County. All right, I'm going to stop right there, guys. I've got just a little bit left. We're on 38 and a little left battery-wise, and I don't want it to not save it. So thank you, everybody, for coming in for part 7 of 90 years in Texas. I'm going to go ahead and put the picture in there so I know. This guy lived a heck of a life. A hard one, no doubt. So, you know, coronavirus is pretty fucked. But my God, can you imagine, you know, dying of measles or all the freaking things that we've managed to find vaccines for? And I know this, that our country will come through this better than the others as long as people are smart. You know, the last week and a half, sorry about that. The last week and a half I've been working nights, and about every other night. And I don't go anywhere without freaking nitrile gloves and my sanitizer. And I am like the worst person out there about sanitizing and shit, because I think eating dirt and getting bacteria on you is what saves you from a lot of shit. But I'm not fucking around with this coronavirus. Not at all. So, anyway, you people within the sound of my voice, stay safe out there. Stay frosty. Keep your eyes open. Situational awareness. And for God's sake, do not buy all of the things. Other people need the things. I'd appreciate if you guys shared this out to anybody that you know that might be interested in this history or in the rocks. Thursday or Friday, I will be going out for the first time to an actual mining gold claim, and I expect to bring back quite a bit of gold. Not a ton, not, you know, a major amount of money, but, you know, a gram or two would be fantastic. Take care of the gas and put, you know, a little bit of money in our pocket if we decide to sell it. Thank you much. I'm going to either try and, no, today's Tuesday. Okay. I will not be doing a scope on this tonight. I strongly recommend all the folks within the sound of my voice at around 8 p.m. Mountain, about 10 Eastern, go to the MAGA Coalition channel. Adam Gingrich will be doing his Tuesday Q&A. If you missed Adam's hour scope last night, Common Sense, I believe, was that was part of it. Common Knowledge and Common Sense was what the name of the scope was. It was fantastic. It really was. And the one before that was really good. Well, he did SNL before that, but the one right before SNL was fantastic. When he flat out let the world know who Jeff Sessions is and who Coach Tuberville is and what needs to happen. So, stay strong, guys. Keep doing what you're doing. Protect your parents. Keep the grandkids away. Unfortunately, I am purposely staying away from the grandkids for a few weeks until this is done. And that sucks. I got 5 of them, and 2 of them within the last couple months, and I haven't met 2 of them. So, and they're only, 40 miles from here. So, but it's a sacrifice. Because Lord knows you don't want to be that one that accidentally kills off a relative because you got corona and gave it to them and didn't know it, or the kids being carriers. I don't know if that's true or not, but I know my kids freaking carried everything. So, anyway, I appreciate everybody within the sound of my voice. Stay safe. I'm praying for all of you. The part 8 will be coming tomorrow. And if it doesn't, it's not because I'm a liar. It's just because shit happens, man. Love you guys. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button. And go back and catch those episodes that you missed. They're on Periscope. They're on my YouTube channel, Smooch Panda. And don't forget, 8 o'clock tonight, Mountain, 7 Pacific. If you're tired of hearing the bullshit, and you want real political punditry, real knowledge of what's going on right now with the coronavirus, then you got to go to Adam Gingrich, because that's all the guy's been doing since this corona thing came out, is studying it. And you've seen his attitude change on it simply because it's a bad mofo. And the more he knows, the more we learn, and the more seriously we can take it. And regardless, even if it isn't what they say it is, stay your ass at freaking home or away from people, because if it is what they say it is, then a lot of people are going to die, and you could help in that if you're not smart. So I'm done ranting. Love you guys. MAGA, Trump 2020. It's all that matters. And right now, guys, go buy the stock market. Go buy stocks. Refinance at 0%. My God. We're going to have a boom when this is over like we've probably never seen. All right, I'm out. Love you. Peace.